When my son was 4, my husband, a border guard, returned with his pregnant mistress. Later, both my son and the mistress fell into the water. She emerged unharmed, but my son stopped breathing. The mistress, belly swollen, cowered in the corner, trembling as I charged at her with a knife. My husband stepped before me. The child is innocent, but its mother is guilty. He forgot I was once a mountain bandit who killed without blinking. If I cared not for human life, how could I care for an unborn child? I raised my blade and swung it down resolutely. When Qin Muhan brought his mistress back to the capital, Yuan Yuan was showing off his newly written calligraphy to me. Hearing this, the rice paper fell to the floor. They must be making it up. Wait. Mother. I'll go ask father to clarify. I took his hand. Let's go together. No sooner had we stepped out of the courtyard than I saw my younger sister-in-law, Qin Xian, arm in arm with a beautiful woman, approaching gracefully. Sister-in-law, we were just looking for you. Qin Xian's eyes crinkled with a smile. This is Miss Huang Qi. She'll soon bear our eldest brother's second child. She'll be your sister-in-law soon. Mother insisted we get along well. Huang Qi, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, gave me a faint nod. Greetings, elder sister. Yuan Qi's eyes reddened. I crouched down, gently coaxing open his tightly clenched little fist. When Qin Muhan married me, he swore before my parents' graves, this life, only me. Should he break this vow, may arrows pierce his heart. If he wished to welcome another into our home, he could bring his corpse to tell me. My name is Hua Yuan, formerly a bandit from Jian Fort. The imperial court sought to recruit us, but their efforts repeatedly failed. Later, the inexperienced Qin Muhan arrived with an imperial edict to lead troops against us. He was skilled in combat, yet unversed in military strategy. Defeating him was child's play. Every time I saw him spinning around like a top, I felt a thrill. Until one day, I lured him deep into the forest, only to accidentally step into a hunter's trap hidden in the undergrowth. Sitting motionless in the pit until late at night, I heard Qin Muhan searching for me everywhere. Holding my broken leg, I stubbornly kept silent, clinging to my pride. I only hoped he would leave quickly, so my brothers, who had gone to look for me, would find me soon. Suddenly, his head appeared above the pit's opening. He let out a heavy sigh. Thank goodness. The night sky held no stars. Yet in that moment, I saw a glimmer of light in his eyes. He tied a vine around his waist, climbed down, and hoisted me onto his back. In silence, he carried me all the way back to Jian village. While the doctor tended to my wounds, Qin Muhan watched from the side. I clenched my molars, refusing to utter a single cry of pain. After everyone had left, he crouched before me and gently placed the wooden splint over my calf. Does it hurt? Reluctantly, I spoke. This time, you win. He withdrew his hand, his gaze intense as he looked at me. I don't care about winning or losing. Huh? I found it unbelievable. Ever since he received the imperial decree to eradicate bandits, we'd been locked in a battle of wits for half a year. He finally won once, yet claimed he didn't care about victory or defeat. He must be making up for all his previous losses. Yeah. Or maybe he was mocking my competitive spirit to show off his nonchalance. That's what I thought. And that's what I said. Qin Muhan listened, his teeth gritted in frustration, yet utterly helpless. He reached up and pinched my cheek. Hua Yuan, what on earth is going on in that head of yours? That was him calling me brainless. Got it. Furious, I flipped my hand and pinched his cheek back. The last person who insulted me got 3 bloody slashes. He captured my hand, sighing as if resigned to his fate. At first, I desperately wanted to win, especially after losing to you so many times. Until tonight, when I found you in the trap. Thankfully, it was a place abandoned by hunters. Thankfully, I found you alive. To me, your safety matters more than victory or defeat. Hua Yuran. Do you understand? I didn't understand at first. Before Qin Muhan spoke these words, I'd never considered our relationship in that light. But when he said it, it was as if someone had forcibly unlocked a hidden door within me. There would be moments when I'd suddenly, inexplicably, think of him. Even during combat, I couldn't help but focus on him. Later, when the Imperial Army withdrew, he left too. After deep consideration, I accepted the amnesty. After distributing the settlement funds to my brothers, I shouldered my sword in a small, flower-patterned bundle, heading for General Qin's residence in the capital. I ignored the stares of the onlookers and disregarded the opposition of the old lady Qin. Right before the gates of the general's residence, Qin Muhan joyfully lifted me up and spun me around. With tears in his eyes, he swore an oath before my parents' graves. I, Qin Muhan, swear here, this lifetime, I shall take only Hua Yuran as my wife. I shall never betray her. Should I break this vow? May I die by a hail of arrows. At 18, I married him. 3 months after our wedding, Eastern Chu invaded. He led troops to the border. It was his first time on the battlefield. Unable to rest easy, I secretly followed him. The enemy commander was the renowned Dongchu warlord, Han Shao. In military prowess, Qin Muhan fell far short of his father, the veteran General Qin. He was captured alive in the very first engagement. Han Shao drew a bloody scar across his left cheek in a humiliating gesture. Go back and write to your old emperor to negotiate peace. The Western Wei's days are numbered. Surrender the city early and spare yourselves the loss of your lives. From the shadows, I drew my bow. As Han Shao turned his head to dodge, I rescued Qin Muhan back to the camp. When the Eastern Chu attacked a second time, I donned a mask and took the battlefield under Qin Muhan's name. Han Shao ultimately fell by my hand. For 3 years thereafter, Wei and Chu fought. And for 3 years I stood guard at the frontier with Qin Muhan. When I carried our first child, the war raged fiercely, and I could not save it. Qin Muhan, consumed by guilt and remorse, held me in the darkened tent. His voice choked with sobs. He said he understood how difficult it was for a woman, even one as fierce and skilled in battle as I, to achieve anything without bearing her husband's name. I stroked his hair, comforting him. Husband and wife are one, there is no distinction between you and me. In the autumn of the 3rd year, I led our forces to a decisive battle against Eastern Chu in the Dan River region. Our army achieved a great victory, capturing 13 cities in succession. Eastern Chu sent an urgent letter seeking peace that very night. On the day we returned triumphant to the capital, the emperor personally conferred upon him the title of Grand General of the nation. The general's residence, which had grown quiet after the old general's passing, instantly became bustling with activity. 2 months later, I was diagnosed with pregnancy. After 10 months of gestation, Yuan was born. My reputation, forged through hundreds of battles over 3 years, deterred any casual incursion into the Western Wei border. Qin Muhan garrisoned there securely for 4 years. I waited for him in the general's mansion with Yuan for 4 years. We could only meet when he returned to the capital periodically for duty reports. Now that we were finally reunited, I never imagined he would bring me such a tremendous surprise. Qin Xian embellished my words beyond recognition. My mother-in-law, the elderly Lady Qin, flew into a rage and summoned me to the ancestral hall for a reprimand. You dared curse your own husband to death. You are utterly treasonous. Kneel at once. I stood with my back straight. My tone calm. Those were the vows your son swore himself. I never forced a single word. If they came true, he deserved it. Hearing this, Qin Xian suppressed her glee at the spectacle and feigned concern. How could you speak like this? Sister-in-law? Was all your obedience these past years just an act? To spare Qin Muhan the awkwardness. After marrying into the family, I complied with everything Lady Qin demanded, treating her as my own mother. Staying awake all night tending to her illness was commonplace, all to earn her acceptance. Yet, the results were minimal. She remained fixated on my past as a bandit. Now, I have no reason left to be submissive to her. I replied with a smile. Of course it was all an act. Madame Qin had never seen me like this before. Enraged, she slammed her fist on the table, demanding the family law be enforced. Servants returned bearing a rattan whip. I was once a bandit. Are you certain you wish to lay hands on me, madam? Her face twitched instantly, and her hand gripping the whip trembled. Just as the standoff reached its peak, Qin Muhan, who had gone to the capital to report to the court, finally returned. Bolstered by his presence, the old lady raised the cane to strike me. It's only right for a mother-in-law to discipline her daughter-in-law, she declared. Let's see if you bandit woman, dare lay a hand on this old crone in front of my son. Of course, the cane never touched me. Instead, Qin Muhan stepped in front of me. Blood blossomed behind him, sending panic rippling through the crowd. My son. Lady Qin dropped the cane entirely. Qin Muhan frowned, then pulled me straight out of the ancestral hall. Midway, I wrenched my hand free. Aaron, I can explain this. I sneered coldly. How could you possibly explain this? Could it be? The child in her womb isn't yours? Indeed, it isn't mine. I froze. His hands rested on my shoulders. Before marrying you, I made a vow you would be my only wife in this lifetime. Aran, do you trust me? Qin Muhan said the child in Huang Qi's womb belonged to Deputy General Su Qi. I remembered Su Qi. When I fought in Qin Muhan's place, we'd shared the battlefield together. Yet half a month ago, on the road back to the capital, he was assassinated by enemy spies. His dying words entrusted me to care for mother and child. To avoid public scrutiny, I had no choice but to bring Huang Qi into the general's residence as my concubine. He clasped my hand. I'm sorry for putting you through this. Ran. Those few words thawed the frozen heart I'd carried for so long. I'm not as unbreakable as I appear. You're the one I chose above everything else. I refuse to let this end in misery. He embraced me, promising it won't. A chill gaze made me turn, only to find Yuan hiding behind a tree, covering her mouth and giggling at us. I too let out a soft laugh. But quickly, my brows furrowed. There was still a major problem at hand. After dinner, Qin Muhan took me to apologize to the old lady Qin. She claimed illness and remained bedridden, refusing to see us. Qin Xian stood nearby, covering her mouth with a light chuckle. Sister-in-law's skill at changing her face is truly unmatched. Your younger sister should learn a thing or two. Maybe then she wouldn't end up being cast aside. Ever since returning home with her divorce papers 2 years ago, Qin Xian had resented me at every turn. With her whispering in the old madam's ear, the matriarch grew increasingly displeased with me. Don't gloat. What I have today, you'll have tomorrow. She gritted her teeth and sneered. You might not even match up to me. At least I still have a home to return to. Once you're kicked out, where will you go? Probably back to being a bandit woman. Qin Muhan silenced her. Qin Xian stormed off in anger. In the dead of night, I felt the coolness of the bed beside me. Pulling on my robe, I slipped out of bed. Through the window crack, I saw 2 figures standing by the rockery in the courtyard. One was Qin Muhan. The other was a woman, partially hidden by him. I caught half a sentence. Deliberately hushed yet faintly drifting to my ears. When do you plan to tell her the truth? The truth? My instincts told me this concerned me. So I stepped barefoot out of the room. Voices drew nearer. But before I could hear the so-called truth, the servants' alarmed cries erupted. Miss Huang and the young master have fallen into the water. Quick! Rescue them. My thoughts froze for an instant as I stepped on a dry leaf. Qin Muhan whipped his head around. And Qin Xian, whom he had been shielding, hurried away. I had no time to spare for anything else. I sprinted toward the cries. Chaos reigned by the unnamed pond. Muffled sobs mingled within the commotion. I pushed through the crowd. Yuan Yuan. Where is Yuan Yuan? Huang Qi, soaked to the bone, leaned against a maid's embrace. Wrapped in a thick fox fur cloak. Her tear-filled eyes met mine. I'm sorry, sister. I couldn't save Yuan Yuan. My muddled mind nearly ceased functioning in that instant. Couldn't save Yuan Yuan? What did that mean? Lady Qin's piercing wails echoed from ahead. The gathered servants scattered. I saw Yuan Yuan in her arms. Eyes tightly shut. Yuan Yuan was lifeless. I staggered 2 steps before collapsing to my knees. Crawling inch by inch toward him. Yuan Yuan? I cradled his cold body, breathing warm air onto his blue-tinged little hands. Wake up. Please wake up. Pressing my face against his. I whispered, look how dirty your little dog is. Get up and wash him. Yuan Yuan remained still, nestled in my arms. It was early spring. Yet why was it still so bitterly cold? Cold enough to freeze the very marrow. No one answered me. I kissed Yuan Yuan's damp, cold forehead, feeling as though every bone and muscle in my body was cracking from the chill. Qin Muhan's eyes burned crimson. His body hunched over, the hand resting on my shoulder trembling uncontrollably. Don't do this. Ran. Our Yuan Yuan is gone. The maids and matrons who cared for Yuan Yuan knelt in a tumultuous heap. They said Yuan Yuan's puppy had run out of the room in the dead of night. Yuan Yuan chased after it all the way to the unnamed pool. By the time they found her, she was struggling in the water, and Huang Qi had already jumped in to save her. Huang Qi, filled with guilt, continued, I heard the splash and jumped in immediately. But even so, hearing this, Qin Muhan glanced at her, suppressing his overwhelming pain. It's not your fault. He instructed a maid, escort Miss Huang back to her quarters to rest. Huang Qi was helped to her feet but did not leave. She placed a hand on her belly and walked to Qin Muhan's side, taking hold of his hand hanging limply at his side, as if silently giving him strength. You still have us. Qin Muhan froze instantly. I suddenly laughed out loud. My voice grew higher. Then I burst into uncontrollable laughter. Everyone looked at me in astonishment. Qin Muhan wrenched his hand free from Huang Qi's grasp and pointed at the servants kneeling on the ground. His voice urgent. Drag them away. Beat them to death with sticks. Hold on. My laughter ceased. My expression turning icy. They didn't harm Yuan Yuan. Why beat them to death? I turned my gaze to Huang Qi. Miss Huang Qi, I ask you, why were you at the unnamed pool in the dead of night instead of resting in your chambers? Without hesitation, she replied, the child in my womb was restless, keeping me awake. I came out for fresh air. How many corridors must one pass through from your Lotus Breeze courtyard to reach this place? She considered, 3. I quickened my pace. When you found Yuan Yuan, what state was he in? His limbs flailing, struggling desperately. Nonsense. I snapped, cutting her off. Yuan Yuan could swim. Qin Muhan held me back. Calm down. Ran. Even if he could swim, he was still young. Exhaustion could have caused him to struggle. But she said she jumped into the lake the instant she heard the splash. Yuan Yuan is young, but he wouldn't have been unable to hold on for even a moment. I stared at him, enunciating each word. She's lying. Huang Qi's eyes flashed. And she changed her story. It's possible I misremembered. The situation was so urgent. Lady Qin chimed in, indeed. Miss Huang was focused on saving Yuan Yuan. A slip of memory is understandable. She turned to me, her voice hoarse with accusation. But you, her own mother, couldn't even watch over your child properly. Now you have the nerve to shift the blame onto others? Qin Xian, who had arrived unnoticed, helped Lady Qin to her feet. Sister-in-law, you bear significant responsibility for what happened to Yuan Yuan. Their sharp red lips opened and closed before my eyes. Their words pierced my chest like blades. Even Qin Muhan shielded Huang Qi behind him. He said, enough. Ran, holding Yuan Yuan's tiny lifeless body. I tasted for the first time in my life the agony of unbearable grief. The one who caused this should suffer 10,000 times more than I. Several days passed after Yuan Yuan's funeral rites. I had not eaten or drunk a drop, keeping vigil by the coffin, not closing my eyes for a single moment. I feared Yuan Yuan might suddenly wake and be saddened not to see me. But Yuan Yuan had been carried away. No one would ever tug at my sleeve again, calling me mother. I wiped away my tears and staggered to my feet. A maid came to support me, but I waved her away. I tugged at my parched lips, though my steps were unsteady. I could still wield a blade. She flinched, not daring to reply. I rummaged through the floral bundle. Beneath lay my knife, though unsheathed not once in 5 years. It remained a fearsome edge. The door to Lianfeng courtyard split open in one swift chop. Seeing my murderous intent, the servants screamed and scattered in all directions. My hair was disheveled. My appearance must have resembled a vengeful ghost crawling out of the 18th layer of hell. That was why Huang Qi had been scared stiff. Her legs giving way. She slid down into a corner, her swollen belly pressing against the ground. Several attempts to rise ended in failure. You can't kill me. The child inside me is Mu Han's. This, I suppose, must be the truth Qin Xian spoke of. To deceive me. Qin Muhan even wove his deceased deputy commander into his tale. He truly spared no effort. I pressed the blade against her shoulder, the edge mere half an inch from her slender neck. I don't care whose child it is. All I know is my child is gone, and you must pay with his life. Huang Qi suddenly cried out, it wasn't my idea. It was the old lady and Xian's sister. They said Yuan Yuan had bandit blood running through his veins and couldn't inherit the Qin family estate. They said if he died, they could find another reason to divorce you. Then my child would be the eldest legitimate grandson of the general's household. The words nearly made me drop the blade. The sharp edge sliced a jagged, slender wound across her neck, a sight that made my blood run cold. It was then that Qin Muhan appeared. No. Ran. Huang Qi dodged my blade and threw herself into his arms. Qin Muhan spread his arms wide, shielding her behind him. Be reasonable. Put the knife away. I planted the blade tip on the floor, swallowing the metallic taste in my throat. Repeat what you just said to him. Huang Qi pressed her hand over the bleeding wound, tears welling in her eyes as she pleaded for Qin Muhan's help. Sister seems ill. She rushed in with a knife, saying Yuan Yuan was killed by me, the old madam, and Sister Xian. I knew she was grieving and tried to comfort her. But she slashed my neck with the blade. I recognized Huang Qi's attempt to frame me. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. I lunged forward, trying to pull her out. That's not what you said earlier. Huang Qi. Repeat it. It was the Qin family who killed Yuan Yuan. Hua Yuan. Qin Muhan frowned and shoved me aside. They were Yuan Yuan's own grandmother and aunt. How could they kill her? Have you lost your mind? The man before me, speaking with such sharp intensity, was the same youth who had crouched beside me that night. asking if I was in pain. I covered my face and laughed. I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. They wouldn't do it. But what about her? She was carrying your child. Yuan stood in the way of her son. Her incoherent ramblings that night. Did you truly believe she was innocent? Qin Muhan pressed his lips together. Silent. So he hadn't been entirely without doubt. But because she carried his child, he had no choice but to spare her. Even without Yuan, he'd soon have other children. But I only had Yuan. I gripped the knife handle tightly. Get out of my way. Qin Muhan seized the blade. Blood dripping, the child is innocent. But its mother is guilty. He forgot I was once the ruthless bandit chief of Jian Fort. Who killed without blinking? If I cared not for human lives, why would I care for a fetus? You betrayed me first. Then deceived me. Qin Muhan, you deserve death too. But first, let me avenge Yuan. I raised the blade toward Huang Qi. Instead of her previous fear and trembling, she flashed a gleaming official badge. I am Princess Yurong, the 7th princess of this dynasty. Dare you kill me? Yurong had long harbored feelings for Qin Muhan. She feigned illness to deceive everyone, secretly leaving the capital under the pretense of convalescing at the border to seek him out. During those 4 years when Yuan and I waited for him day and night in the capital, he always had a beauty by his side. It wasn't until Yurong became pregnant that she sent a letter to her father, the emperor. After his initial fury, the emperor could only seek ways to cover up the affair. Thus, Qin Muhan was summoned back to the capital. Yurong assumed the pseudonym Huang Qi and entered the general's residence as a concubine. The Qin family, mother and daughter, coveted her royal status and devised a poisonous scheme. They lured him out using Yuan's puppy. Taking advantage of Yuan's complete trust in her, Qin sure pushed him into the water from behind. Finally, Yurong pretended to rescue him, but instead held Yuan underwater until he died. She then pinned everything on me, forcing Qin Muhan to divorce me. Yurong would then smoothly become the general's wife, bear his legitimate son, and everyone would be happy. I pieced together this truth by eavesdropping outside their window. I smashed through the window and thrust the blood-stained blade into the table before them. Why did you stop? Continue. Madame Qin's face twisted in horror. You. What do you want? Qin Xian seized the chance to flee. I kicked Qin Xian to the ground, drew the blade, and drove it through Madame Qin's right palm. I kicked Qin Xian to the ground, drew the blade, and drove it through Qin Shi's right palm. Was it this hand that pushed Yuan into the water? Screams and shrieks erupted simultaneously. When you caught a chill and coughed incessantly at night, Yuan would pick fresh loquat fruits every dawn to stew soup for you, so you could sleep peacefully. My voice choked with emotion, my hatred more bone-deep than ever. You were his grandmother. How could you bear to push him into the water? He was only 4. So very young. Do you think I wanted to? Qin Shi broke down in tears. The emperor's will must be obeyed. If we didn't dispose of you and your son, how could the entire general's mansion survive? I wiped my tears. Yes. So you should have disposed of me too. But you were too late. Now, I will dispose of you. I pulled the knife embedded in her palm and thrust it through her throat. Warm blood splattered across my face. Qin Xian was utterly terrified. Princess Yurong is in the mansion. How dare you? I pointed to the blood on the knife handle. She's too preoccupied with her own troubles. You killed the princess? I grinned. How could that be? This is the blood of the child in her womb. I personally cut open her belly, letting her experience the agony of losing a child firsthand. As for whether she lives or dies, that depends on her own fate. With that, I grabbed Qin Xian by the hair and forced her face into the large water vat outside. Go now. Your mother awaits you on the road to the underworld. By the time Qin Muhan summoned the imperial physician to sew up Yurong's abdomen, his mother and sister were already dead. Imperial guards surrounded me. I pulled a throne chair to the center and watched Qin Muhan collapse to his knees. His eyes filled with agony. Aaron. Why? He couldn't comprehend how such a perfect family could collapse in an instant, leaving him bereft of loved ones. So I had to tell him. Because you were unfaithful and heartless. Because you were unworthy of being a father. Had you not secretly consorted with Yurong? How could imperial wrath have descended upon us? You bear significant responsibility for this calamity. Does it hurt? Feel it deeply. Our business is far from settled. The imperial guards dragged me into the heavenly prison. Bloodstains had dried on my body, turning deep brown. I waited 3 hours before the one I sought finally arrived. You've come. The figure removed their hood, revealing a face bearing Yurong's features yet radiating a completely different aura. It was Princess Hejin. I've come to fulfill my promise. Hua Yuron. Hejin exchanged my life for that of a condemned prisoner to free me from the heavenly prison. Immediately after, a massive fire erupted within the dungeon. Its blazing flames lit half the sky red. The city gate guards diverted their forces to fight the fire. I slipped out of the city unhindered and headed straight for the Western Wei border. With Wei and Chu at a truce for years, Han Shao no longer maintained a garrison here. I headed for the capital of Eastern Chu, wearing the mask Hejin had specially crafted for me. I knocked on the gates of Han Zhao's residence. The moment he saw me, he mistook me for Qin Muhan. I removed the mask. He stared in disbelief, taking a long moment to recognize me. Lady Qin? I am not Lady Qin. My name is Hua Yuron. I said. I have come to pledge allegiance to Eastern Chu. So for those 3 years, the one fighting under Qin Muhan's name on the battlefield. It was you? I said nothing, drawing my sword instead. The all-too-familiar technique instantly confirmed my identity to him. He showed neither shock nor contempt at discovering I was a woman. He merely asked calmly, "What do you seek?" "Revenge for my son's death." With spies embedded in both Wei and Chu, my deeds at General Qin's residence were no secret. Moreover, Yu Rong, consumed by hatred, had long proclaimed my countless crimes to the world. To the masses, I was a villain whose misdeeds filled volumes. Qin Muhan, however, became the pitiable one. Such a world turned upside down, I must set it right. Han Shao introduced me to his master, the Eastern Chu princess, Yinghua. Among the Eastern Chu rulers 9 sons and 1 daughter, Yinghua was his most cherished. She plucked a peony bud, twirling it between her fingers. Alas! All my father could ever give me was affection. He had so many good-for-nothing sons, constantly fretting over their endless foolishness. Yet even so, he never once considered naming me heir apparent. Bright red nectar stained her fingertips. Tell me, is this fair? I gripped the hilt of the blade at my waist. I shall deliver the justice your highness desires. War erupted once more between Wei and Chu, stationed at the rear of Eastern Chu. Within 7 short days, I commanded Han Shao to breach the Western Wei border defenses. The Western Wei emperor showed little panic. With composed calm, he penned an imperial edict, summoning his protector general, Qin Muhan. He ordered him to march day and night to the battlefield. The demoralized and scattered morale of Western Wei's troops surged instantly. They shouted the name of their war god at the top of their lungs. Having used the title I forged for him for so long, Qin Muhan likely believed it himself by now. He still wore that mask. At his waist hung a long sword identical to mine. Those years I spent accompanying him at the border had taught him much. Han Shao was no longer his match. At my behest, the Eastern Chu forces withdrew 30 li. Qin Muhan's confidence only deepened. Even the loss of his mother, wife, son, and sister could not shake his resolve to achieve glory on the battlefield. Any lingering impact was selectively cast aside. Truly, he seemed born for great deeds. Too bad I was still alive. Therefore, his death was inevitable. After Han Zhao's defeat, I rode my horse to the front lines. Qin Muhan and I wore nearly identical attire. Even the patterns on our masks were identical. He froze, then sneered contemptuously. A poor imitation. Utterly laughable. I offered no reply. Verbal sparring is merely the domain of the weak. I hurled my long blade, its edge shattering his mask. Blood beads rolled down his brow as Qin Muhan drew his sword in fury. He was actually quite unskilled with blades. Since I wielded a sword when fighting in his place, he had crafted one modeled after mine. But a counterfeit remains a counterfeit. The moment my blade touched his throat, shock flashed in his eyes. Who are you? We knew each other too well. The answer was clear the instant he asked. I slowly removed my mask. After years as husband and wife, General Qin couldn't even recognize me? Qin Muhan's expression changed abruptly. The Western Wei soldiers behind him were even more so. I had accompanied Qin Muhan here for 3 years. Every soldier in the Western Wei army knew that General Qin had a wife who accompanied him on campaign. Many had seen my face. What's going on? Could it be? A roar of disbelief, like a crashing wave, pierced the eardrums of every soldier. Their war god general was nothing but an impostor, falsely claiming his wife's name. I crippled Qin Muhan's right hand. The blade was sharp. By the time he felt the pain, gushing blood had already pooled across the ground. He lay flat on his back, drenched in cold sweat, yet let out a hollow laugh. Flowers on fire. Are you satisfied now? He said he had nothing left. He said every time others praised his military genius. It felt like scraping bone. I come from a family of generals. From my great-grandfather to my father, they were all heroes who galloped across battlefields. Yet I needed my own wife to save me. It turned out he had never truly understood the hardships women endure. He believed I was inherently inferior to him. That was why he harbored resentment over my rescue. He even felt humiliated. The affection that blossomed in his youth gradually drowned in these complex emotions. It was then that Yurong appeared. Everyone expected me to achieve greater feats on the battlefield. But only Yurong worried for my safety. Her heart and eyes were filled with me alone. For this, she braved her father the emperor's wrath to have me recalled to the capital. Only in her presence could I truly be myself. I couldn't help but laugh. Who knew one could invent so many lofty excuses for their own narrow-minded cowardice? He couldn't die now. He hadn't truly tasted the bitterness of loss. I changed my mind. He didn't deserve to die on the battlefield. I kicked him back. Let him return to the Yurong he longed for. To be his true self. Live well. You must. At least live until we meet again. The commander-in-chief lay crippled. The army's morale shattered. With the Eastern Chu forces, I easily reclaimed the 13 lost cities. Those were the cities I had once seized for Western Wei. Yinghua was the nominal commander of this campaign. The princess led the expedition, reclaiming 13 cities in one decisive stroke. With strategists fanning the flames, popular acclaim among the common folk reached its zenith. Her good-for-nothing brothers, obsessed only with luxury and pleasure, were never Yinghua's match. The only heart Yinghua needed to conquer was the sovereign's. This battle presented the perfect opportunity. Poems and essays praising the princess flowed continuously onto the imperial desk. Court officials submitted petitions urging her to participate in governance. Observing Yinghua working late into the night in the council chamber, the ruler of Eastern Chu felt his resolve waver for the first time. Rather than entrust Eastern Chu to his sons, incapable of upholding the throne, destined to prolong the kingdom's existence for a mere decade or two before its inevitable collapse, he considered enthroning his only true heir, a daughter who possessed both ambition and capability. On the day Yinghua was proclaimed heir apparent, I departed Eastern Chu. I returned to assure Hijin, I shall not break my word. I clasped my fists. Thank you, Your Highness. She curved her lips in a soft smile. It is I who should thank you. On the day I left the imperial prison, Hijin handed me a letter. It was meant for Yinghua. Only one sentence was written upon it. I wish to rule the realm alongside you. It was this letter that finally earned Yinghua's trust in me. She transferred me into the Eastern Chu army, granting me the chance to defeat Qin Muhan on the battlefield. And I did not betray her trust, helping her win the hearts of the people and the allegiance of all officials. I once asked Hijin why she chose me as the messenger. She replied, we have met before. Not at Yuan's funeral, but much earlier. Long before, when I was fighting yet another victorious battle for Qin Muhan. She had seen me from afar. At that time, I carried the Emperor's edict of commendation and rewards to the frontier. It was right after our army's great victory, and you were riding back to camp with unbridled spirit. Though you wore a mask, those eyes of yours, I could never mistake them. Even then, I had set my sights on you. That's why she made her promise to me at Yuan's funeral. Go ahead. I'll protect you through everything. The trade-off was delivering her message. Revenge suddenly felt much more straightforward. I charged into Yurong's courtyard, sword drawn. I learned the brutal truth. Not a single one of those who harmed Yuan escaped my vengeance. The Imperial Guards threw me into the heavenly prison. Hijin arrived as promised. Clutching the letter, I journeyed to Eastern Chu. Now that my mission was complete, I naturally retired from service. The Western Wei Emperor's health deteriorated steadily, and the struggle for the throne grew increasingly fierce. The rebellious princes were either deposed or demoted. The one who ultimately broke through the siege was the unexpected eldest princess, Hijin. She strolled leisurely onto the palace dais. Behind her stood a dense wall of imperial guards. I respectfully request Father Emperor to abdicate. A prolonged cough finally subsided. I underestimated you, my child. To have covertly placed the palace guards under your command without a whisper. Hijin answered with a smile, all thanks to Father Emperor's wise guidance. The old emperor slammed his fist on the table in fury. Did I teach you to rebel and plot against your sovereign father? Father, spare your breath. The one you await will not come. Kazuma produced an urgent dispatch from the frontier. She announced that Eastern Chu had invaded, and the Crown Prince had personally led the campaign. The army dispatched to the capital in response to secret intelligence had no choice but to turn back to defend the border. The old emperor erupted in curses, denouncing Hijin for colluding with foreign enemies for personal gain. Hijin remained unflinching. History is written in meticulous detail, always by the victors. Are you not a prime example of that, Father? The old emperor's expression shifted slightly. Qin Muhan, sword in his left hand, stood guard beside the emperor with his personal guards. Blades clashed, and the hall instantly descended into chaos. Hidden among the imperial guards, I swung my blade to halt Qin Muhan's attempt to flee with the old emperor. His right hand was crippled, his left-hand weapon was easily knocked from his grasp. Just then, Yurong arrived in haste. After nearly a year apart, she had grown terribly thin. Her eyes were sunken, her face as pale as gold leaf. Qin Muhan shouted at her, Yurong, leave this place quickly. It's dangerous. Ignoring him completely, she dragged her emaciated body forward. She ran straight toward me. Yet she did not appear to seek vengeance. Her emaciated fingers clutched my arm with deathly grip. Her voice cracked with exhaustion. Tell me it wasn't you. They lied. You never fought in Qin Muhan's place. Say it, say it. Her parched eyes flickered with faint light. I seemed to become her last lifeline. He and Jin slowly parted their lips. Seventh sister. Are you speaking of the day we went together to the frontier to deliver the imperial decree? That day, you and I watched from afar as the soldiers galloped back to camp. The one leading them, wearing a mask and a long sword at his waist, was none other than Hua Yuran standing before you now. The lifeline snapped. The last thread of hope was severed. Yu Rong, her spirit shattered, collapsed to the ground. I felt as though I understood something. Qin Muhan also caught on. Yu Rong. You. She suddenly burst into laughter. Her expression mad. Foolish me. Loving the wrong person. Ha ha ha. As she laughed, grief and fury overwhelmed her, forcing a mouthful of blood from her lips. I crouched down, meeting her gaze level. You're pitiful to the point of absurdity. Let me help you. Help you end this ridiculous life. I raised my hand and clamped it around her slender neck. Let her savor the slow agony of suffocation. I watched her face turn crimson, then pale, then dark purple. Finally, her neck snapped. All life drained from her. I shook my hand and turned to Qin Muhan beside me. Your turn. He showed no reaction to my words. He remained oblivious, even as the old emperor was forced by Hijin to sign the abdication edict. It seemed the truth that Yu Rong had fallen for him only because she mistook me for Qin Muhan was utterly unbearable to him. Reputation, status, wealth, women, all these things I brought you. Qin Muhan, you should be grateful to me. As if stabbed in the chest, he hunched over and curled up on the ground. Now, he truly had nothing left. I looked down upon this man writhing in agony on the ground. Until one day, when I led him deep into the forest, we stumbled into a hunter's trap hidden in the thicket. Standing here now, looking back on the path I've taken, I still admire that version of myself who journeyed alone to the capital, carrying nothing but a floral bundle and a long sword. Those who give their hearts whole are not at fault. The fault lies with those who betray that sincerity. But he need not swallow 10,000 silver needles. For Qin Muhan had long chosen his own fate. Imperial guards forced him to kneel at the palace steps. I raised my hand. Arrows flew in a hail. The new emperor of Western Wei ascended the throne. The crown prince of Eastern Chu sent congratulatory gifts from afar. Thus, the two nations signed a century-long truce. They fulfilled the promises made in the letter. Each ruled a nation, jointly governing the realm. Neither side ever betrayed the pact. With the realm newly pacified, peace reigned across the four seas. I, who knew only warfare, found no place for my skills. I welcomed this outcome, for I had other matters to attend to. The path Yuan never finished walking. I would walk with him. The flowers Yuan never saw, I will show him. The imperial edict of reward passed me by. I left the capital city with a flower-patterned bundle and a blade. Just as I had come. The end.